Hello there, and welcome to another edition of Cooking with Nancy Drew and me, Kristen. So today we are reduxing the ice cream pie that I made before because if we're being completely honest, it was just okay. So I've taken some steps ahead of time here since you've probably already seen all of this done once before. I have pre-softened 2/3 of a container of vanilla ice cream. With things being limited at the grocery store, I wasn't able to go with the same brand, so we've got Breyer's Vanilla Bean here. Then I'm going with peaches this time. The original recipe called for strawberries, and it just had you dice them up. This time I've actually pureed the peaches in a food processor. I used frozen peaches that I had thawed overnight in the refrigerator, and then I did include the juice with this because with the other one, the strawberry flavor seemed more like an afterthought. So I want a punch of peach in this is my plan here. So I'm just going to take the peach goop and dump that in. It calls for 1/2 cup of the fruit. I went ahead and I measured out 1/2 cup. And again, I want a punch of peach. This didn't seem like it was going to be enough. So I just kept going. This is about a 1 cup food processor with everything thickened. Or not thickened, but rather before it's minced. So I would say I did probably have about a cup, 3/4 cup of peaches in there. So we're just going to mix this together. And honestly, I already like the look of this better. One of the issues with the last one is that when the strawberries were frozen, they were really almost painful to chew. I'm not somebody who can like bite popsicles. It gives me goosebumps just thinking about that. So with that, you had to kind of gnaw on the strawberries to like warm them up in your mouth. And it just wasn't pleasant. So with this, I'm hoping this incorporates the fruit into the ice cream more so that you're not gnawing on frozen chunks of fruit here. And this is getting blended in pretty easily. I might need a bigger bowl here because I'm just about to goop out over the edges. And again, this is just 1 quart of ice cream, so it was 2/3 of a container because most of the containers around here come in 1 1/2 quarts. All right, I think I've got this pretty thoroughly mixed in. Hopefully I didn't miss any parts that are still a little thick in the middle there. Now, the other thing it called for was 24 chocolate cookies. I assumed Oreos, but when I was making the crust before, I struggled to mince up the cookies into small enough bits. I also struggled to cover the bottom of the pie dish with those. So this time, instead of regular chocolate cookies, I have opted for the lovely caramel coconut Oreos that are one of my favorites because I thought that would go nicely with the peach. And I actually put them in a food processor. I'd ordered a beautiful rolling pin to do this, but they must be making that rolling pin from scratch because it is supposed to take 1.5 months to get here. So food processing these was an interesting choice because the cream in the Oreos seems to have turned it into like a dough. So these aren't really crumbly. It really is like I made an actual pie crust dough. So I'm going to go ahead and push this down to coat the bottom of the dish. I also went ahead and used the entire container of Oreos instead of just the 24. That is partially because I did make it in the food processor, and so I thought without the crumbs, it might not go as far. This looks like it's going to be more than enough even to get some up the sides, which is what I was really hoping for, because I didn't have very much on the sides with the original one. But if you have an actual rolling pin to do this with, you probably don't need the food processor. Also, I completely forgot to even look for the chocolate cookie crusts that I have been assured are available readily in most baking aisles. Now this is supposed to bake in the oven at 350 degrees. So I have my oven preheated. I'm going to go ahead and put the ice cream mixture in the freezer while we do that so that it doesn't turn into total ice cream soup. And then we'll check back in after this is baked and this is thickened up a little bit. And we're back. So we went ahead and baked our crust for 8 minutes. I pulled it out. I didn't like the way it looked, so I added a few more minutes. I think combining the filling of the cookies with the actual cookie itself made more of a dough, so it did require a few more minutes, but it looks pretty good. It's more of a crust consistency than just crumbling them tended to be, so it looks good here. Then I went ahead and just kind of froze up our ice cream again. Hopefully it's not too solid. So we're going to go ahead and dump this in here. Oh, this is interesting. It is all one piece. Hopefully it's a little gooey in the middle. Oh, it is good. All right. Now I'm just going to spread this out so it fills the crust. The crust is holding together nicely. Hopefully it continues to do so. All right, and on this one, I'm going to focus more on taste rather than aesthetics. Unfortunately, I did destroy my nice neat little clock stencil that I had used for sprinkles before, so I'm just going to leave the top of this one bare. I thought about maybe putting a couple of peaches on top in like a spiral to decorate it, but then I remembered that when I was eating the other one, the frozen strawberries were really unpleasant, and again, it gives me goosebumps just thinking about it. So I'm not going to freeze any fruit on top of this. Maybe when I serve it, if I wanted to put a fresh peach as a garnish on top, that would be okay, as long as that's not frozen as well. So we're going to let this sit up. I'm going to give it about an hour to 2 hours, and then we'll cut in and see if it's any good. And we're back again. So I just pulled our lovely ice cream pie out of the freezer, and it looks pretty good. So let's just dig right in, I guess. A little firm, so I might suggest letting it sit and thaw for a moment or two. So lesson learned, I should have greased the pan because the crust is completely stuck down there. Okay, 5 minutes later, I think I got a piece out. So the texture of this crust is drastically different than the last one. Like I said, I was suspecting that with the cream filling being mixed into the cookie, it formed more of an actual crust. You can see it like snaps apart like regular pastry would. So let's try this. Try and get a little bit of everything in the first bite here. Oh, this is way better. I think pureeing the fruit makes a huge difference. The crust is more consistent, even though it's a little bit harder to scoop out, but I think if you let the pie thaw for a little bit before you try to serve it, grease the pan, you won't have those issues. Once I did kind of reach a spoon underneath the crust, you can see it formed perfectly to the pie dish there. I think I maybe just made it a little bit too thick, but the flavor of everything is really nice. So I think peach with caramel and coconut Oreos is the way to go with this one. If you want to keep it simple, the strawberry and just regular chocolate cookie crust was good. It just was a little too crumbly of the crust, and the giant chunks of strawberry were a little unpleasant and gave me goosebumps when I ate those. So I would suggest pureeing the strawberries and maybe using a rolling pin to make a more sticky consistency with the crust. Or I think even pureeing the cookies to make a crust like this would be good. Just be sure you grease the pan, or maybe even having like parchment under it to kind of pull it up, because freezing it, I think, is what led to kind of that rougher consistency here. So this is really good. I like this update. I think I would prefer this one to the strawberry, but I don't think the strawberry was necessarily bad. I would just need to make some tweaks so that I wasn't chomping down on giant frozen bits of strawberry. So with this, I'm going to have my ice cream. And until next time, toodaloo, Nancy Drew.